Hi, and welcome to today's Writer's Workshop class. We're doing a slightly different format today where I'm going to walk you through class and I need you to fully participate. What we're going to do today is have a brief exploration of storytelling. We'll watch a moth story so that you can start thinking about your moth story. That's coming up. Start to think about stories and to talk to folks about stories. Then we're going to switch gears and we are going to then move into the collage essay. Think about that important event that you wrote about before you took this class, and we'll start some research for your collage essay and brainstorm a little bit together to the point where I think you're going to have some interesting ideas to work on next week. Okay, first, I just need to give you some basic moth rules. Some of you have been to the moth, you've seen it, so you've got some experience. There really are only 3 rules. The story has to be true, you can't use any notes, and it can't be more than 5 to 6 minutes long. Generally, we'll ring a little bell or blow on a harmonica at 5 minutes to let you know that it's ending. Now, the best way that I can really explain a moth story to you is to have you watch one. So we're going to start by watching a moth story. I also want you to understand when you're, watching a moth story that every moth story doesn't necessarily have to be about a dramatic event. And it's sometimes really fun just to explore who we are.
When I was a teenager, in spite of being a straight-A student, I had delinquent tastes in music. I loved 70s punk rock like the Ramones and the Sex Pistols, who, if you don't know, are the spiritual ancestors of bands like Nirvana and Green Day. Of all these bands, my absolute favorite were those godfathers of punk, Iggy Pop and the Stooges. Nobody epitomized sex, drugs, and rock and roll the way they did. It was 1997, and Iggy's record company had just released a greatest hits compilation called Nude and Rude to coincide with his 50th birthday. Being a delinquent, I skipped class to listen to the CD at my mall's Blockbuster Music. But then, being a straight-A student, I wrote a review of it for my local paper, the Sun-Sentinel. When the article was published, I clipped it and sent it to Iggy's record company, hoping they would deliver it as fan mail. And they did. A few months later, I got this envelope in the mail. No return address, New York postmark, and a Georgia O'Keeffe flower postage stamp, which my artist friend Carlos later explained was supposed to represent lady parts. So I tear open the envelope, and inside is this card with this absurd photo of Iggy on the cover wearing a crown. And when I open it, I realize that it's a personal note from Iggy himself. Iggy wrote, "Amira, hi, I got your letter. When you get this card, give me a call if you want to, please. 212-291. There's a machine, so leave a number if I'm not there. I'll be in South Florida quite soon, which is where I lived at the time. It'd be nice to meet you, Iggy." I was nervous and flipping out because Iggy Pop was my idol, my teenage fantasy, and he wanted to talk to me on the phone. I was sure I was going to pass out, so I begged my boyfriend Eric to phone the number on a 3-way conference call for moral support. Eric dials the number and the answer machine picks up. The message on the machine isn't something normal and comforting like, "Hi, I'm not here, leave a number after the beep," but rather Iggy sneering, "This is that thing you throw peanuts at. Take a shot, sucker." So poor Eric is awkwardly leaving a message when Iggy, who screens his phone calls like Gwen Stefani, picks up. Now Eric is stammering and calling him Mr. Pop. And somehow Iggy smoothly talks him into hanging up. And then Iggy and I are alone together on the phone. I'd like to think that after reading my review, Iggy must have thought I was older and worldlier than I was because we hit it off really well. He was in the process of getting divorced, was on the rebound, leaving New York, moving to Miami, and he wanted to meet me. He told me that he liked my exotic name. So although we never explicitly discussed it, I was pretty sure I'd get to live out my wildest rock star fantasies with Iggy Pop. Iggy and I spoke a couple of nights in a row, and in the meantime, I'd persuaded my friend Carlos to drive me to Miami. Everything was set except for a time and a place. Let me stress that this was happening in 1997, when people still talked on the phone and didn't just text all the time. Also, I only had one line in my house, and the kind of family where everyone picks up the phone in the other room and listens in or interrupts as they see fit. So, when I called Iggy the next night to arrange a meeting, my mom, who had gotten word that I was spending a lot of time on the phone with an older man, picks up the other line and says, "Amira, time for Betty Buys. It's a school night." The game was up. I awkwardly confessed that I was only a high school student, and Iggy politely explained that he couldn't meet me anymore, or every male member of my bloodline would come after him with swords. I'm not lying. That was the last I ever heard from him. At the time, I was absolutely mortified that this had happened because the coolest thing that had ever happened to me had just ended in the most uncool way imaginable. But after years of therapy, I've come to see that the real hero of this story is not me or Iggy Pop, but my mom, who, despite working 2 jobs, still had the attention span to save me from my inner teenage delinquent. And while I didn't get to live out my rock star rebound fantasies with Iggy Pop, she got to live out every mother's fantasy. My mom told Iggy Pop that it was a school night.
Now that you've seen a story, start to think about how to present it. They have some very clear advice on the Moth website that you might want to look at. You should have some stakes in the story. You want it to matter to you. You should really not have any meandering endings. Make sure that you have some kind of ending to your story. Don't do a stand-up routine. No rants. You can't just get up there and complain about things. And no essays. This isn't a format for an essay. This is nonfiction narrative. So you're really telling a story, not presenting an essay. Now that I said that, let's switch gears and do something totally different. An essay. Okay, so your collage essay. You started to work on it. You've written part 1 already. Next step is to do some research. Where do you start? So look at the document that we put together for the collage essay, that packet. And if you look at it, you've done step 1, and now we are going to together kind of explore what the next steps look like. Okay, I'm meeting you here on the Writer's Workshop Collage Lyric Essay Packet. And we spent some time talking about the big idea. And we went through these concepts, considering what Dinty Moore did in Son of Mr. Green Jeans, thinking about what Doyle did in Joyous Validorus, and how they approached these different topics and how they reached their big ideas, in part by combining them with other ideas that surfaced. You have thought perhaps about your big topic, and you have written about an event, some event that happened in your life that you see reflected in the topic. You should have played with color, song, food, smells, light. You should have really explored a moment that you felt was going to be a good reflection in something that you want to spend a little bit more time on or that's meaningful for you. Now, we have to look at what happens next, right? So the next thing that's going to happen is that you're going to do some research on something that emerges in your thinking about your big idea, in your thinking about your event. There are a couple different places you can start. One place to start is with a date. So if you think about that event you wrote about, what date was it on? Research the date. See what comes up. See if there's anything interesting that comes up that you think, I would like to explore that a little bit further. Or you might want to take a slightly different approach and think about ideas that leap out from what you have done. So this is what we're going to do today. Today's class is essentially task number 2, where you are going to be researching your next idea, whatever that idea might do, and you are going to cut and paste and put it into your Google Doc. So you're going to find another topic by exploring dates or places or events and do some initial research. I have a couple links that you can click on that are in the packet, or you can use a number that appears in your original piece, or you can catch another random thread that captures your attention or that warrants consideration. I mean, just think about how random meatballs and homecoming queens and lunch for breakfast are. Think about how Biss explored the development of the telephone, and that led her to the history of lynching, and that led her to musing about redemption. You could try to draw together, as Miller and Paola say in Tell It Slant, 2 links to show how a critical moment in your life unfolded against a corresponding moment in history. Don't feel the need to justify to yourself immediately why something feels important. If your gut tells you it's important, then surely it is. I want you to copy and paste that research into the same Google Doc. Do not use Wikipedia, for heaven's sake. Then I'm going to ask you to speculate about connections. These speculations are not going to appear in your essay explicitly, but they're going to be in the white spaces. Biss's connections led her to research on lynching, and I want you to write a few of those connections in your Google Doc. Then I would like you to ask questions and see if you can concoct a metaphor that may be apt, such as my marriage as reflected in the Soviet space program. Write some metaphors in your Google Doc. Don't filter yourself. Write as many connections, real or metaphoric, as you can. Then make a list of possible outside sources, including folks you know and places you could go. Now, what you're going to see next is my attempt at doing research for an essay I'm working on. I actually started working on this last year, and so you are going to see my musings from last year, which weirdly were happening right about this exact same time when I was working on this with my class. And you can see that I started doing research on tattoos, and I go through a whole conversation about what happened then. So please watch this, but while you're watching it, I want you to think about how you are going to attack your problem and find another topic that you would like to explore. So let's say that I am writing about going with Ms. LC to get her tattoo, okay? So I'm writing about this event that's meaningful to me. And this is the beginning of that 400-word story that I might write. Last week, I went with my best friend to watch her get a tattoo. We went down to a neighborhood I could only call Under the Viaducts on the south side of Chicago. The tattoo parlor, do people still say parlor, was bright, but a velvet rope prevented us from venturing in. Everything was clean and lovely, and several people were laid out on tables, exposed, enduring pain. So this is the beginning of my piece. Now I was thinking about research. I'm getting this tattoo, right? Why am I getting it? I'm getting it because the Cubs won the World Series. Well, I want to know some more about tattoos. So let's say I do a little investigating here and I'm going to learn a little bit more about tattoos. Here I am in my new tab. There is my art of the day, crossing the Rio Grande. And I want to know more about tattoos. So I'm going to type in history of tattoos. Now, what comes up first? Wikipedia. Okay, we're not going to click on that because I want to find something a little bit more interesting. But I can see right here that the word tattoo comes from the Tahitian tattoo, which means to mark something. It is arguably claimed that tattooing has existed since 12,000 years BC. I didn't know that. Wow. Okay. So now I'm going to go to the tattoos history at the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian is the source I can trust, right? And look at this tattooed hand of a mummy. Wow. Okay, that's pretty crazy, right? And if I read this article, I'm going to find out a lot of interesting things about the history of tattoos. So, what I'm going to do is, kind of look through this a little bit and think about wow, there's a lot of great information here. There's a mummy with tattoos. Now I'm going to take this information and I'm going to copy it into my Collage work in progress on my Google Doc, right? So I want to learn more about tattoos. I'm going to put this right here. All this stuff about the tattoos. Wow, there's a ton of stuff, right? But I want to be sure that I mark where I got this. So I'm going to do this right now. And I'm going to look and see, this is from Smithsonian.com. Okay, I found this on Smithsonian.com on this day. This is when I accessed it. It would help if I could type. And just so that I'm sure that I can find it later, I'm going to highlight it. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this right now. So I'm just going to put down that, okay? I will be able to get that link later and it's going to help me. But I've already included all of this great information, right? So look, I know all this stuff about the earliest evidence of tattoos, the function of tattoos. Okay, so that's really helpful. So I want to know more about tattoos there. I've got it. Now, I also want to know more about the history of the Cubs. Okay, so I'm going to go back to a new site and try to find out the history of Chicago Cubs. Here we go. All right, so this is sort of interesting. I've got the history timeline. I have Wikipedia, boo. I have Baseball Almanac. Oh, and here's Heroes in Heartbreak. This is from the Sun Times, which is sort of interesting. This came out on October 25th, 2016, though, so it might not be that helpful, right? So ESPN might have something a little bit more current on the Chicago Cubs, but I think that's going to be to follow it. I want to go back up to the top and see if there's something I'm missing. Well, here is the MLB site. Okay, this could be interesting. Let's see what this yields. So the MLB site gives us some Cubs history in this interesting little bits here, right? And then it's got franchise timeline, opening day lineups, wow, all-time rosters, sights and sounds. I don't know if this is really what I want. Let's see if I can find. Okay. Doing this search leads me to Sports Illustrated's long article about the Chicago Cubs through the years. We've got Theo right here. I'm hopeful that this is going to have everything I want. The dynasty, the drought, the cursed years, champs again. This is pretty interesting, right? Look at those guys. Okay, so this site has so much that I want, right? Including the Steve Bartman game, which is such a horrible, terrible thing. And this is when I decided in 1998 that if the Cubs ever won the World Series, I was going to get a tattoo. So was really important stuff to me. So, including the Steve Bartman game, which still breaks my heart. Okay, so I'm going to copy all of this and I'm going to put it into my document so that I've got it. Oh, I'm not going to do it that way. So, do you know about this? Maybe you do know about this, maybe you don't. There is a way that you can put in your information to paste and match style. So if you hit paste and match style, you're going to get the exact same style of font that you had previously. It's really cool. Okay, so I got all this information from, go back and see Sports Illustrated, right? So Sports Illustrated, and I'm going to put down the time that I accessed this. So we'll put Sports Illustrated, and the date I accessed it, which is today. And then I'm going to copy again and paste. It took me a long time to find that, right? Dang, that was too long. But that's okay sometimes because you have to think for a long time about how you want to attack this material. Now I actually want to put this underneath here. Okay, so here we go, all of my other information. Now this is another question that came up. Okay, so I said I went with my best friend, right? Why do people connect to best friends? Why is that a thing? So I don't even know what I'm going to get for this. Research on best friends. I have no idea what's going to come up here. New research shows the power of a best friend. Huh, that's in parrots.com. That's actually a pretty great source. Here is the importance of friendships, Psych Central. I have no idea what this is. Okay, let's see who's in charge of this site. Okay, this actually is a peer-reviewed site, which is interesting. It does have some advertising on it. It does not provide medical, mental illness, or psychological advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I'm kind of curious if this is a real site, so I'm looking right now. Internet's largest and oldest independent mental health social network. Award-winning website. What kind of awards have they won? Oh, well, they've won some pretty good awards. Okay, this is interesting. So I think I might be able to trust this site, right? So I feel pretty good about it. So the importance of friendship looks like a really interesting piece. And I think it might have something here. Ooh, I like this. They're quoting Aristotle. Friendships are vital for well-being. We want friendship during difficult times. A massive study of friendship. His work resulted in some surprising statistics. If your best friend eats healthily, you are 5 times more likely to have a healthy diet yourself. Wow, this is interesting. Okay, so I've got to say that I'm really intrigued by this. So what I'm going to do is copy this. Okay, I'm doing it right now. Now I'm going to paste and match style. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to write down where I got this, which is, as we see, Psych Central. Okay, it's from Psych Central, and it's dated, the day I accessed it, of course, is today. Okay, I've got some interesting pieces here, and I think this is going to help me write a pretty decent essay. So now I want to speculate about connections. This is part 3, and this is the part that you have to take yourself through. So why do I call Ms. LC my best friend? What does that really mean? Why do I want to mark myself forever as a Cubs fan? Why do I want to do that? Why do I want to get this tattoo? What is permanent? Oh, a tattoo's permanent, right? But is my best friend permanent? Wait, have I changed best friends throughout my life? And what does that say about permanence? What lasts? I asked myself. Does anything last? These are some pretty big questions. Okay, now part four asked you, if you remember correctly. Okay, let's look at this. We have found another topic by exploring dates or places or objects or events. My research is to look into all of the connections that I saw, like tattoos, right? I looked at some events, I did some initial research, then I speculated about connections. Now I'm going to ask questions and see if I can concoct a metaphor and then make a list of possible outside sources. So this is what you should be doing right now. So here we go, metaphors. What stands for something else? A tattoo could mean permanence. The Cubs stand for perseverance. The Cubs taught me patience. Their pain equals my pain. And then I kind of went randomly to highways and viaducts as an escape. Now, what are some possible sources I can talk to about my essay? Well, I could talk to KLC. I could talk to a former best friend, although that might be super awkward, right? I could talk to my mom about her memories of my childhood best friend, Amy, who lived next door. I could talk to Alan, the tattoo artist, and ask him about why people get tattoos. I could talk to someone else who has a cool tattoo. I need to have a voice in my essay. So this is what you need to do. You need to do exactly what I have just done. If you look back on this, you could really take a different approach though, because I was exploring words that I was kind of riffing on, but you absolutely could find your topic by looking at dates, right? Look at objects, events, do some initial research. I could research the day that the Cubs won the World Series and what else might have been happening that day. That would have been an interesting way to go. Instead, I chose to sort of think about all of these different things that popped into my mind as I was thinking about that central idea. Lastly, I want you to have fun with this. You should be writing about something you care about. And then the research is really super interesting, and the conversations that you're going to have are also fascinating. Really explore your topic. I really look forward to seeing what you're going to do. Take care of yourselves, and of course, have some fun.